melt is when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Patriot Coach Sherman Rivers, whose team is in the state quarterfinals on Friday, I believe, after another great season and another regional title, district title, regular season district title. Congratulations, Coach, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me, man. I'm glad it's under these circumstances again. So hopefully, we can keep it going and do a couple more of these interviews. That means we're advancing.
Exactly, because I don't talk to losers on this podcast. you gotta win. So no, right. All the competitors. We've had some great basketball this year. Now, look, one thing that's interesting, or at least different from last year, is no more Battlefield Patriot rivalry. And I mean, that rivalry was compelling. I know you're not crying, but it was fun for the neutrals to watch. I mean, the energy in that building, the basketball was great. The contrast and style was great. Is it bittersweet at all that Battlefield is gone, or you just looking ahead and seeing what's next?
Listen, anytime they lose, I'm going to be a fan of it. So, obviously, for the general public and basketball aficionados, it's a good environment, like you said, from a fan standpoint. The product that's on the floor is usually pretty good. So I know that was great for everybody else. And it's not even something where it's like, man, I really didn't want to play those guys because I still felt like we were the better team. It just, from a rivalry standpoint, I don't ever want them to win anything. So, so it doesn't hurt my feelings that they lost, but obviously they were a very good team and ran into a very talented offensive team in Freedom that night and got themselves in a little bit of trouble. So,
yeah, I was talking to Coach Mack. Freedom has guards that down the stretch, when everyone's in the one-on-one and stuff, they can get to the foul line. So
exactly.
if they're close to you, they can be a very dangerous team down the stretch because of the way they play.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Coach, Freedom's also behind us as well. But let's talk a little bit about your final against Forest Park. You guys pretty much breezed through your tournament. And Forest Park, I tried to watch it online. I was at another game that was a blowout. I forgot where I was that night, but it looked like it was competitive at first, but you guys started to pull away in the second quarter. So tell us about that matchup.
Obviously, Mac does an excellent job with his team, and they got a guy that's a load inside, and we were doing a lot of fouling in the first quarter. Not necessarily something that I was happy about from both sides' perspective. I kind of wanted them to let us kind of play, let us decide it. But, I think in the first quarter total, it was like 12 fouls called between both teams in the first quarter. They got in the bonus pretty quickly. So once we started making it harder for them to score and not giving them opportunities at the foul line, I think that we kind of pulled away a little bit.
Yeah. So how would you describe Forest Park? I didn't get a chance to see them this year. I understand they got a quality big man. Are they going to be a dangerous team in the future, you think?
Yeah, because they're young. He's only a sophomore. I think their other players are sophomores and juniors for the most part. Like I said, Mac does a really good job. They play really hard, which is, very important. I feel like that's something that people kind of look past at our level, is how hard teams play. Because on those nights when you might not necessarily have it, at least your effort is there and can make up for it. So they play really hard. They're well coached. They got a guy inside that is very difficult to deal with, and they got some guards that know how to play around them. So I think that they're a good basketball team. They do a lot of inside-out stuff, obviously, with having them down there. And then, they defend at a pretty good rate for sure.
I think Prince William County is in good hands. Coach was telling me they got some young players on that side of the county, and I know you got a freshman that's real nice player, real nice prospect, and other young players as well. So I think we're going to have some great basketball for at least a couple of years to come, and I'm sure beyond. Coach, one thing we haven't done is I haven't given you a chance to shout out your assistant coaches squad. Now you have more assistant coaches than some football teams have, and you seem to be well supported on the bench. So why don't you tell us? I know your father supports you well. Tell us about some of your assistant coaches that have helped you build this nice team.
Oh, well, listen, we wouldn't be what we are without those guys. I remember when I was first thinking about leaving Potomac and taking a job at Patriot, it was important that I had certain guys that I wanted to come with me because I had a vision for what we were going to do. And I'm really happy that they were able to come with a lot of them. Got a lot of Potomac ties to them. Devon Johnson, and the unfortunate circumstance if I've ever to be tossed out of a game, he'd be the one to take over. Devon has been been an assistant for a very long time. Was an assistant under Kendall, then was assistant for Keith all those years. So very very deep basketball knowledge he has. Played at Longwood, so he obviously has that, and played at Potomac as a high school player. Teron Patterson, who everybody gives me a lot of the credit for all that social media stuff on our Patriot stuff. I don't run that. That's all him. He's our basketball ops guy.
He played at Potomac also, right?
Correct. Played with at Potomac during the Eric Hayes time. He played there. Runs our social media, does all our parent contact with that sort of stuff. So, I'm really appreciative of him. Daryl Patterson is another assistant for us. Daryl was actually a senior at Mount Olive the 1 year that I coached in college, and I was there. So I'm pretty sure he graduated as Hilton's all-time leading scorer when he left school there. So, obviously his basketball pedigree and his knowledge. Griffin Flanagan is a kid that played for me, graduated 2019. I was on that team, our first state team. Very smart kid, knows his stuff. Then our JV coach, JJ Infantes, does a great job with those guys. And our freshman coach, Ronald Blair. And, I'm saying I would be remiss if I left out my mother as a scorekeeper. So I make sure I mention her. She's quote unquote like a coach anyway, coming and telling us what we're supposed to be doing when we're not doing it. So, and then obviously you mentioned my father being on the staff. So I know we got a lot of guys over there. And then I didn't even mention Chris Pellegrino, who came on this year as our strength conditioning guy, has a background in that, getting our kids in the weight room, make sure they're stretched and recovery. So everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a job. It's great to be in practices and put those guys in different baskets and different sort of stations and stuff we run through to kind of zero in on things that we're doing, knowing that I don't have to hover over them to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do because they know a lot of basketball. So it's great having them there. You see every time out, I'm talking to them, getting their input about what they think, what they're seeing. So, I know that I always say this and everybody will say the same, I'm sure, but I feel like we have the best staff overall in the state as far as the input that those guys give and the things that they do on a day in and day out basis.
You didn't shout out any of your cousins. Any cousins or aunts and uncles you want to talk about? Okay, that's it.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get to the task at hand. We got Landstown coming into town. Huge advantage. They got to get on a bus and go 4.5, 5 hours up your way. Tell us about Lansdowne. Did you go down and watch him, or did you watch him? Did you watch him online?
I wasn't gonna make that trip, man. That's far, and we still were gonna have practice that day. So it just logistics of that. I know that Mac made the trip. I know that Dan Nemro made the trip down to watch the girls' game, Gainesville coach. So, and they probably like, "You're not going." I was like, "Nah, I'm good." So maybe that's just the experience factor in me knowing that I'm gonna drive all the way down there just to get the film from somebody anyway. So I didn't necessarily get that game. I got about 20 to 30 minutes of highlights from it from somewhere, and then got a couple of Landstown films from some other coaches that I know. So, I like to work smarter and not harder, so to speak. But listen, very good team, very good program. Obviously, had a history of winning. Their coach is a very good coach. I think he's done an excellent job this year. Obviously, losing a player like Donald Hand for them to be able to bounce back and be at this type of level is a big deal. So we know it's not going to be an easy thing, even though they're making the trip. They're going to come in here ready to play, and and they've done it before. They've actually won a state championship. So we're trying to do what they have done in the past, and hopefully we can go out and get some things done and take care of business.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like from what I gather, it's probably a pretty good matchup. You guys probably match up pretty well against Lansdowne. So do you feel like it's a good draw for you guys, or both teams would have been tough?
Both teams would have been tough. 757, they're going to have athletic kids down there. They're both well-coached teams. At this point in the season, everybody's good. So really doesn't matter who you get. It's just about taking care of what's in front of you and doing it that way. So And everybody was asking me who would I rather play. I said, it doesn't matter. I like our guys. I'm confident in our guys. So I feel like we can play with anybody that comes across our path.
Yeah. Do you think nowadays, obviously, when we played, uh, the 757 Hampton Roads had the advantage over the northern region, northwest region at the time. Do you feel like they still have an advantage, or do you think it's even now, or maybe we have a little bit of stronger sides these days?
I think it's pushed more towards us, especially in the six division. Maybe in Division 5 and 4, you can still kind of argue it down there for them. But in Division 6, I feel like the tables have kind of tipped towards Northern Virginia a little bit.
Yeah.
Not trying to give them any bulletin board material because they're still a very good team. But
Yeah.
just in years past, you look at the amount of Northern Virginia teams that have won it at the Division 6 level. I feel like it's kind of tipped that way. That division, the other one's not so much.
Yeah, maybe one day, and I've been saying this all along, we can get all the teams back together and actually find out who's best instead of at the end of the season say, well, they won 5, they won, Kingsport won 4, Highland Springs won 5, and Patriot Hayfield won 6.
I'll never forget when the first year that they did it. That was the biggest thing. I was like, the fact that you can have a state champion down the street, because at that point Potomac was still 5, and that's where I was
Oh, is
coaching.
that right? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and everybody else was 6. So it's like, can you imagine like Garfield won a state championship, Potomac won the same year? Like that was around the years when Colonial Forge was really good and they won back to back. And everybody, all they wanted to talk about, because our 2014 team was really good. And they were saying whether or not that Forge team would beat us, which they wouldn't have, but I'm sure they think different. But
it'd be nice to play.
Right. The fact you have to have that argument because you don't get to see it is unfortunate, and it would be nice if the people that make these decisions would actually ask for our input every now and then. We're talking about that and getting everybody together. I would just like for the losers of the regions up in the Fairfax area to actually have to travel outside of their zip code when they lose a game. Poor Mac, he's got to go all the way down to Norfolk to play a state game. And then you got Edison just has to go over to where are they going? Westfield.
Yeah. I actually disagree. I actually think Mac's kids are going to have the time of their life. I actually think.
Listen. As far as the journey and the trip, that's great. And I think that all teams should have to experience that. It's just a very interesting dynamic to have 2 regions not have to travel outside of their zip code during the state tournament, and that's the part that I'm not going to scream whether things are fair or not fair because that's annoying. I can't stand when people do that. You got to beat who you got to beat, but you can't say that it's not an advantage to not have to make that sort of trip and to really just play against people you see all the time.
Yeah, I was talking to Coach Carlos about this Hayfield coach yesterday, and I mean it's ridiculous that he's got this incredible team, and he's not going to play anyone out of Fairfax County, Alexandria, Arlington until the state final, and that team can very much be from Nokesville. Or
right, and that's what I'm saying is that like it's just crazy. Like at least rotate it so every year it's different. Because I remember like when we're talking about the Hampton Roads and when we played Hampton, we played in the state championship my sophomore year. And then the next year we played them in the state semifinal because they switched it to where you play different teams in the quarters and the semis. And so I just don't understand how they wouldn't think that maybe we should rotate this. So, or maybe that the Edison would have had to come here to play their game, even if it wasn't that. And the biggest thing there was like, oh, the traffic, guys. We drive in the same traffic you do. It's not like we're in some other state. We are literally 30 minutes down the road. So that trip is just as long for us. Yeah. Right. That trip is just as long for us as it would be for y'all. So I don't know who's making these decisions. I don't know what the thought process is behind it. I know they tried to say, oh, we want to cut down on travel and money. Well, why are we still doing it?
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. Tonight, Stonebridge traveled down to Roanoke for a regional final, not even the state.
Listen, as a person that had to do stuff like that in high school, in the old Northwest region, having to go play GW Danville at Roanoke College.
Yeah. Everett one time. Yeah.
Right. Was it Roanoke? We played, I think it was Lynchburg. That's where we played at.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Either way, it was far. And we had to go all the way to William Fleming for a regional playoff game. So, but that's the old Northwest where it had us and everybody else, but like I
Well,
said, I would like for them to come to some sort of decision that actually involves the people that are being affected by said decision.
but get some people that understand competition and know how to run a tournament. Look at other states too. You want to find out who's best. If they feel like that they need an advantage to become state champ or regional champ, just tell them the regional champ. Tell them what they want to hear, and then let's settle it on the court. So my son,
That's all you want to do. You like you said is listen. Los and them are a great team, and they beat everybody that they've played. But like you said, it's like you would have liked to see them play somebody outside of their general vicinity in the state tournament. Not so much the region, because your region is local,
right?
But state tournament, like you said, they might not have to play anybody outside Northern Virginia if we get there. So it's just a very interesting dynamic. And it's not even necessarily just that. It's a lot of different things. It's like shot clock, and it's like, who are we actually asking these questions to?
Yeah. So my son played in the state final against Hilton. He played at Yorktown 2 years ago, and it was a wonderful moment for him, a wonderful moment for me, and
Okay.
we'll never forget it. But you know who else remembers that moment? No one else, because
Right.
everyone goes to state all the time now. So if Yorktown goes to state, it's not a big deal. Everyone's going to state somewhere now. It used to be when Potomac went to state back in the day. That's big when you went to state. When TC Williams went to state back in the day, it was huge to go to state. Now
It was right.
If you tell someone you go to state now, they're like, "Oh."
I mean, look at how they did the regional tournament up there. There are teams that made the regional tournament that won single digit games.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
It's just. I don't know.
And there's a team in your region that didn't have to even qualify. They get an automatic bid to the region. What's that team you were telling me?
Colonial Forge.
Right. I mean, what kind of mess is this? It's just,
like I said, and it doesn't make sense. I don't understand. I really don't. I wish I knew the thought process, but I can't explain it. Like that's another one. It's like they just stick them in there and they're like, all right, they're this seed. Well, why? They didn't play anybody up here.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I guess all you can do is try to beat who's in front of you, and then if you win,
that's all you can do.
That's all you can do. So anyway, Coach, I wish you the best of luck as always. Hopefully we'll be talking next week.
I appreciate you, Julian.
Okay, you too, man. Good luck.
All right, man. Bye.
Bye, bro. Yep.